So things that we skip sleep on are a blink in the eyes of evolution. And the question I wanted to pose to you is whether if we spend more time with insects and apes than we spend with our friends human being, maybe our mind is not fully adjusted to the challenges of the modern world. And I think that's exactly the case. Would somebody know what is the common denominator DNA-wise between us and the chimpanzees, which is the closest species? How much do we share in terms of DNA?
98 or 99.
Yeah, it's 98.74. And so what is 1.4 responsible for? We are probably the only species that can travel, explore time in our mind. And therefore we are probably the only species that is doomed to a very set fate. I mean, we are the only species who are aware of our lives and death simultaneously. But that's not the subject of tonight. Tonight I'm going to talk about the 98.75%, which we share together with the chimpanzees. And those genes, or part of them, are responsible to keep us alive, to make sure that we survive. And if you will turn to be the assistant of Almighty God, and you'll be asked to design a machine, our brain, that will protect us from different threats, what kind of features are you going to put into it? Well, I will suggest you some. The first one would be, you would like to be able to identify patterns as quickly as possible, before even they crystallize. And it's not just a threat, a shade in the bush or a sound. It might be a common denominator to the food you eat and you don't feel well about after, or the changes of color in the ground that might hint for some existence of water somewhere. So being able to identify those. The second, you're going to prefer negative scenarios, because if there is a threat, it will end up in a negative scenario. I don't know whether you're aware of it, but out of 5 dreams you're going to dream tonight, that's the average we are dreaming every night, 4 are going to be negative. If you share a criticism with your spouse or a friend of yours, you need 5 praises to compensate for that, because the criticism leaves a much deeper mark in our mind. We are tuned to it. Then 2/3 of the English words that describe a situation will be negative. When you're talking about human traits, it's going up to a staggering 75% of human traits, if you just classify them, will be negative. So you're going to prefer a negative scenario. The third one, that machine shouldn't be punished for a false positive. Because if you are not sure whether that sound you just heard is a predator or your friend coming back from the brain has to estimate whether it's a threat that you can escape from. If that is the case, it will send blood to your hands. That's fight. Or that's something you cannot manage. It will send blood to your legs. That's flight. So fight or flight, and adrenaline, of course. But if that threat ended up as something which is nothing happens. After 20 minutes, the adrenaline dilutes and you're back to normal. But in real life, mistakes you're making in the capital markets or any other mistake, you're going to be punished. So your machine is not adjusted to being punished because it's just focused on threats. And the last item is probably the most important one. It needs to be very quick. Within our brain, there are dwelling 2 different systems. The emotional system, which is very quick, that is the fallback position of the brain. That protects us against threats. And the rational one, which is much more sophisticated and slower by almost half of the first one. The first one is the one which we'll be using when we talk our mother tongue, which is not the case now for me. When we're telling the truth, if we're telling a lie, we need the other system to make sure we are not contradicting ourselves. That system is more sensitive to the tone of my voice than to the content. It has many, many advantages. That's what we call intuition or gut feeling. It has one big disadvantage. It is totally blind to probability. Nothing. If you ask people what is bigger, 1 to 100 or 1%, many of them would say, not many, but a quarter would say 1 to 100 is bigger. Now, if you ask them what is more dangerous, a disease that will kill 1,200 out of 10,000 or 28 out of 100, they would feel that the 1,200 is probably worse, which is, of course, not the case. So we are blind to probability, and we need that system because it's so crucial to our survival. What happens if we are blind to probability? We are crowning the randomness. We are crowning the random. And just to be able to demonstrate it to you, let's assume that you're getting a letter. We are on March now, at the beginning of March, telling you that the stock exchange will go up during March. You throw it away to the bin because, those letters, come on. 1st April comes and you're getting another letter saying April is going to go, you already identified the letterhead and it says it will go up on April as well. And it does. You're now starting to pay attention. On May said it will go up, and it does go up. And 3 consecutive months when it goes up is not that usual in the stock market. So now you're attentive. On May or June it said it will go down, it goes down. July up, it goes up. And August it will go down, it goes down. He was right in 6 months. And on the 7th month, you're receiving a letter where you're being notified that the guy is opening a new investment fund and asks you whether you would like to participate. Well, you should admit it's quite tempting. The guy, showed that he knows something about the capital markets. Well, the guy doesn't know anything. What the guy did, he issued 10,000 letters. 5,000 said the market will go up. 5 said the market will go down. To the guys who got the one with the right answer, he issued another 5,000. Half said go up, half said go down. At the end of the 6th month, he remained with 312 people who will swear by his name. Because the guy, so what I'm trying to say is, because randomness, if I have to define it, Darwin said it's a way of nature to manifest itself. Einstein said it's the way of God to control the world and still remain anonymous. But Linus Pauling, who is a physician and a chemist who won the Nobel Prize, said that randomness is the visible traces of invisible laws. And the story I just told you showed you the visible traces of an invisible principle, which is 10,000, 5,000, 2,500, and so on. So that is something which we have to really watch, because we are prone to make mistakes here. We are seeing something and we might misinterpret it because we don't understand where it comes from, and because we don't understand probability. Naturally, as our emotional system is on always, we are prone to make a mistake. I'll give you another example which will demonstrate one of the most important laws which we tend to ignore. Let's assume that you're a basketball coach on the line now. The game is about to end. There are 7 seconds remain. Your team is lagging by 1 point. You have the ball. It's a timeout. And you have to decide to whom of your players you're going to give this ball for the last chance of winning that game. Because a successful basket, if it was hit, it's 2 points. And sometimes, if it's from distance, even 3 points. And the dilemma is very present this very night, because your best player, which usually hits 55% of what he does, tonight is only 45. And there is a guy in your team of 5 who's usually doing 45. Tonight he's doing 55. And not only that, he had 5 consecutive successful hits in a row. So what do? Do you give it to the guy who usually is doing well, but tonight for whatever reason didn't do so far, or to the other guy who tonight is excelling by, as I said, 55%? Who here is going to give it to the guy who usually is good, tonight is not so good? Nobody. Who is giving to the other guy which had the hot hand? That's the research is called the hot hand fallacy, because you have to give it to the guy that usually is good. What did you miss in my story? You've missed two things. One, having 5 consecutive successful hits in a row is not that unusual. A professional player would hit about 50%. So it's like a toss of a coin. And he would hit 20 times every game he does. So let's just toss a coin 20 times and have the result and see what is the probability of getting 5 in a row. Actually, it's not that low. It's about 25%, which means that each player will do it once every 4 games. And within every game, there will be one who does it. Nothing to really applaud for. And if you're looking about 4 consecutive, that's easy. It's about 50%. 3 consecutive, 80%. So that's one thing we don't know. The other thing, which is more important, it's a very powerful statistic law, which is called regression to the mean. The first guy who noticed it was actually an Englishman, the nephew of Darwin, Francis Galton. And he realized that tall parents will have a tall kid, but not as tall as they are. And short one will have a short one, not as short as they are. It looks like nature is trying to protect us from a certain chaos. It's just trying to manage things. So the regression to the mean, what it says is if you have an unusual observation in a certain phenomena, the next one will tend to go closer to the mean. It's not going to. Therefore, probably what will happen on that night, that the player who is usually good is going to get to his average. Now, they did an experiment on, just looking at your age here, some of you might remember Philadelphia 76 with Dr. J. They took 48 games, and they analyzed the situation. What should you do? And they came out with the idea that you should give it to, in those actual games, empirically, to give it to the player who is usually better. If you feel somehow frustrated, you're not alone. The New York Times got flooded 3 weeks by letters from statisticians, mathematicians, everybody, that it cannot be true. But they came with the research. It's called the hot hat fallacy. And the law, which is beyond everything, is a regression to the mean. If I have to remain with sport examples, there is what they call in the US the Sports Illustrated jinx. And the Sports Illustrated jinx idea is if you are on the cover of Sport Illustrated, chances are that you're not going to perform as well the next weeks or month or whatever. And you're better off avoiding the cover story of the Sports Illustrated altogether. Just forget about it. It doesn't do you any good. And Sports Illustrated got worried. They're approaching people that just refuse to be interviewed and to appear on the cover. Again, they just try to find out whether there is any truth in the belief, and they analyze 2,700 different issues of Sports Illustrated. They're coming out every week. And sure enough, about 900 of those reflected that phenomena. Athletes didn't do as good after they appeared. Why? Because for somebody to get on the cover of Sports Illustrated, he should really do something exceptional. So chances are that the following weeks he's going back to his average, which is not that still very good, but less good than what made him appear on the cover. So that's the jinx of Sports Illustrated. So we are blind to probability. We don't understand the principle beyond things. So we are getting there. You can see how that bad decision is about to shape up. And now comes another phenomena. Our pattern-seeking mind is facing random patterns which nature and humans are throwing at us every time. I'm not going to challenge Shakespeare with my accent, so one of you is going to read the Act 3 and Scene 2 in Hamlet. Please.
I'll do it.
You do it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hamlet, do you see yonder cloud that's almost in shape of a camel? Polonius, by the mass, and 'tis like a camel indeed. Hamlet, methinks it is like a weasel. Polonius, it is backed like a weasel. Hamlet, or like a whale. Polonius, very like a whale.
Thank you very much. So you can see, first of all, that advisors have the tendency to, to please their bosses, but you can see how easily our mind sees first, then the eye, then only the eye is coming into functioning. It's our mind. So our mind-seeking pattern is identifying things that are not there. In this country, if you go out and look at the sky, you probably will see nothing. But where I'm coming from, you go out, look at the sky, and you see the stars, like the ancient Greek did. And you want to see a Leo, a lion, you can see a Taurus, a wild bull, you can see. And if you're ready to be satisfied with birds, you got two, the big one and the small one. So if a universe that you're looking at is large enough, you will see whatever you want. Frank Ramsey, who is a brother of Michael Ramsey, used to be the Archbishop of Canterbury, the 100th of them. He died very young, 28, and he dedicated his short life trying to better understand the chaos in nature. He was a philosopher, he studied mathematics and so on. And what if he established a law which is called the Ramsey Law? If you will take the first 101 numbers, put them into a hat and just scramble them as much as you want, then take them out, spread them one by one, you will always be able to identify 11 that goes up, I mean, not 1, 2, 3, but like 2, 13, 25, and so goes up a sequence of 11 or goes down. So with a very small number relatively of 101, there is already some order. So it's so easy to to make it to come to a conclusion, but there is none. I mean, that is totally random. That's so we have that our pattern-seeking mind, and we have nature and humans who are throwing at us those random patterns constantly. We need something to bring those together to make the mistake in our decision. Can somebody just think what it might be? We have a mind that seeks pattern, we have pattern, and then we're going to jump to a conclusion too fast. Because of what? What makes us do that mistakenly jump? It's our overconfidence. And that is really the subject of that chapter in the book. It's overconfidence. Now, overconfidence is quite valued in the society. If you're interviewing or being interviewed, you can, that's a major asset if you're confident. If you look at a party and want to see who is most popular, the confident guy is standing there and everybody is around him. I was in my previous life. I was running a venture capital fund. I interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs. They're overconfident. Those guys are sure that their business is going to be successful, even though they will be wiped out, 3/4 of them within 3 years. Restaurants, 3 years is the most a restaurant will survive. Nevertheless, people are, doing those every day. They're opening new one. You should appreciate that entrepreneurs are somehow important to society because they dilute the herd instinct of ours. Without them, we'll do nothing. Nothing will happen. They are pushing forward because of their overconfidence. Now, to be overconfident, one needs to be able to self-deceive himself. I'm trying to explain why. I mean, nobody will come out of his bed in the morning if he will have to admit to himself his shortcomings, his weaknesses, and so on. In order to protect ourselves, we need some ability to hide those things from ourselves. But the brain doesn't really feel comfortable with lying. I once talked to a guy who was doing it in the Israeli security services, and I said, "How you detect a liar?" He said it's relatively easy. I mean, if you don't have to come to court to prove anything, and it just your experience and intuition. First of all, he doesn't say I or we. He doesn't use strong emotional words like, I was very angry, I was upset, and so I was very happy. It doesn't. If a story has 3 parts, the beginning, the middle, and the end, this guy jumps directly to the middle. It never has a beginning. So I said to him, so what do you do? And he said, it's easy. I'm asking him to tell the story from the end to the beginning. Now, because there is no story, he would get stuck somewhere. He would just lose it. So our mind, now, if you're going back to our prehistoric man, 200,000 years ago, back in the savannah of Africa, being able to deceive was very important, because if the hunting wasn't that abundant, I mean, somebody calculated you will hunt a giraffe one every 90 days. So to be able to take something before it was split in the tribe is very important, and to be able to detect that somebody is even more important. So we do have that ability, and that's how self-confidence, how overconfidence is becoming something very, very common, because we have that ability. Now, so we are just to show you that you're not spared from it in this store, I'm going to ask you something. You're probably familiar with the Apple brand logo. You do. Don't take your phones out. Okay, the Apple logo has an apple, and it has a small leaf, and it had a bite on one of the sides. Now, only those of you who are fully confident that they know how it looks like will tell me if the leaf is leaning to the right or to the left, and if the bite is on the right or on the left. So who here thinks that the leaf is leaning to the right? What you say is, I have no idea. Should we try Samsung or no? Okay. Who thinks it leans to the left? Okay, 2 to the left. Okay, who is quite confident that the bite is on the right? Who thinks that it's on the left? Okay. You know, no, I appreciate you're trying to participate. It's important. Anyway, they are both on the right. And I told you, only those who feel fully confident will raise their hands. And nevertheless, about half of you were wrong. So, but that's a tendency. We believe that we are better driver than the average, better lovers. We will live longer than our mate in the room in the university. Women, by the way, are less confident, and so are people who are making decisions, many decisions on a daily basis, and get a feedback, like the weather forecasters or bookies. Please go ahead.
No, I just totally agree with that. Just saying,
yeah, okay.
Isn't that what I mean? Like Churchill said, isn't it? Success or happiness or something is just leaving a complete trail of disaster, going from disaster to disaster,
right,
with no loss of enthusiasm. You know, you don't let it get you down. You've got this water-missing thing. You
right,
just
right.
Going, keep buggering on, as he said. Yeah. And you know, surely you need that confidence. You need
yeah, sure, I agree.
I agree. Going at it, even though you may be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
So,
society needs it, but not you as an individual. That's a difference. You are serving society, and it does have a cost which you're going to end up paying. That's I mean, it's quite different. So, what feeds overconfidence? Information does feed over. In our age, in our era, it's information that feeds overconfidence. If you think about it, you left home today, you didn't forget to shut off electricity, the water tap, but as far as information is concerned, you're quite confident that you'll be able to deal with it, regardless how much it's going to be, and you are quite confident that you will know what is important and what is not important. You're wrong probably on both assumptions. I'll give you, anybody here is be ready to make another guess. I hope I didn't really depress you completely with what will be the single most important element in a negotiation, which will have the biggest impact on the end result of a negotiation. I'm talking about a one-off deal. I'm not talking about a deal that creates relationship. Just a one-off. You're selling a flat, you're buying a car. What is the one single thing? We're going to save time here. The one single thing is the opening bid. Because the opening bid is an anchor. It's called an anchor. It just sticks in your mind, and regardless what's happening, you'll end up with a number which is close to that opening bid more than maybe you wanted at the very beginning. So if there is a question, who should come up, you're negotiating with somebody, who should make the first offer? If it's a one-off deal, you will make the first offer, because it will end up closer to that anchor. And that anchor proves that we cannot ignore. We think that we'll be able to ignore information. We cannot. And that's, so I'll give you an example again from this very country. One scientist, a behavioral researcher, which is what I'm basing my writing on. I'm reading a lot of research of that kind. He interviewed 8 bookies in the racetracks and asked them what are the most significant factors that will influence the success of a horse in a race. They came up with like 88 different factors. The history of the horse, the nature of the track, the jockey. I mean, you can think about 88. So the guy, the researcher, he took like 40 races that were already done, and he fed them with the different factors that they mentioned as important. But he did 5, and then he asked, could you say who? He gave them 5 items first and said, who are the 5 horses that arrived first? With no particular order, just the 5 that came first. Then he gave him another 5. Who are you have more information, would you change your mind? Who are the? Then another 10, so altogether 20, and then a full 40. And he asked them who came first, but also how confident are you in your answer? So we have 2 elements. What is your answer, who came first, and how confident are you that you gave the right answer? And he provides more and more information. The level of accuracy didn't change. It was like about 20%. But the level of confidence changed a lot. It just went up dramatically. So more information feeds our confidence, but really doesn't really help us too much to make a better decision here. Now, what is the price we are paying for being overconfident? I think first of all, we ignore the role of random events in our lives, which are major. We just feel that if something good happens, it's us. If something bad happens, it's bad luck. We just don't understand that something good might happen to us we have nothing to do with it. It just happened. And if we ignore the role of randomness, we somehow shut off our ability to learn. Because if you would always think that something good or bad happened to you, something good happened because of you, you will never learn. I mean, in order to be able to learn, you have to be less secure, less confident. The second thing is, you develop a sense of control which you don't really have. People are ready to pay 4 times as much for a lottery ticket if you give them the chance to pick up the number. In Los Angeles, if you go, you have the traffic lights and you just push the button and it says walk or whatever. Here it seems to be connected to something. In Los Angeles, it's not connected. You push the light, but it gives you a good feeling that you have a sense of control. Some of the air conditioning systems are connected to nothing. Once you push it, you feel better, but it has no impact whatsoever. So overconfidence gives you that sense of control. If you put, by the way, 2 teams into 2 identical rooms, and you raise the level of noise in each of those rooms, again, the same level of noise, and in one room will have a button which can say, stop that noise. Nobody is going to push it, but the people in this room will be able to tolerate a higher level of noise, just because of the sense that they can control it somehow. I'll give you an example here about confidence. We'll go back to sports, something you might be more familiar with, the football. An Israeli team did a research, quite a heavy one, on the penalty penalty shots. Penalty shot, everybody, I believe, knows. It's like 11 meters from nobody stands between the guy who kicks the ball and the goalie. And it's given when somebody, were trying to stop in an illegal way, if you want, the other team, or in games where you have to end up with some decisive result, like usually in a cup game. Now, what is very interesting about it is the ball leaves the foot at 100 kilometers per hour, which is too fast for the goalie to be able to jump to one side, to the side the ball is going to. Yet to pre-decide where he's going to jump. 93% of the goalies do jump. When they jump, their chances of stopping the ball that was hit to the goal is about 13.5%. If they will guess well, always, they will do 27% altogether, which is quite nice. But if they will stand still, they will do 33%. That's what that research came up with. Of course, if everybody will hit the center, the goalies will adjust. But right now, that is the case. And 32 goalies have been asked, so why do you jump? They said, well, we are paid so much, we develop that confidence, and we have to show that. So being overactive is another price that goes with being overconfident. In the stock market, being overactive is probably destroying the most of value that you can think about investments. And information does trigger that willingness to be active. There is a famous research that was done in MIT. Two groups have to choose 10 stocks which they knew quite well. Everybody was doing his own list. One group got all the information about those companies. Financial statement, even gossip about the CEO, everything. And at the end of each day, they could decide whether they would like to sell, to buy, to do something. The other group got nothing, only the stock price. After 6 months, the group that got nothing did much better than the one who got a lot, because those guys who got a lot felt that they have to act upon that information, and usually the pattern which their mind was seeking wasn't fully crystallized. The chances of a stock to go down, a stock will go down 5 days in a row, every six weeks. Again, like the basketball thing, nothing, surprising you. It happens every 6 weeks. So what do we do? Again, let me just do the whole string: the mind, chimpanzees, pattern seeking, blind to probability, ignore randomness, nature's coming and human with different random patterns, overconfidence, just get them together. Overconfidence is fed by information. Overconfidence makes us be overactive, ignore randomness, and having a false sense of control. Women and by the way, people who are clinically depressive are also immune from overconfidence. It's interesting. So what can we do to fight overconfidence except for hiring a depressive advisor? Well, there is a new field of research now, which is called intellectual humidity. And I wanted to talk just very briefly about humidity. Things that we know, we do know. Things that we know for sure, we do not know. And things that we do not know that we do not know. The ground play of overconfidence is here. Things that we do not know that we don't know. And humility is, first of all, acknowledging that we don't know things. That's the starting point. Then acknowledging that others might do know. And we are committed to get that knowledge from them, not to improve our social status, just because we want to know what we're missing. And the third one, and that is the most crucial but most difficult one, is the readiness to change our mind when we are facing with contradicting facts to what we believed. And that's very difficult, but that's a part of being humble and intellectually and that's what intellectual humility asks for. You should appreciate wisdom, I think, is not, definitely not knowledge, but wisdom is a moral trait of the ability and the commitment to try and find out the things that we still don't know. And maybe I should end up here with a quote by Ted Turner, which really encompasses us all. He was quite arrogant in the 90s. He was the founder of CNN. He was beyond the merger of AT&T and AOL, which wasn't that successful. He's different today, very generous philanthropist. and much more humble. But then what he said was, if I was only more humble, I'll be perfect. Thank you very much.